really happy. I'm really grateful. I'm really thankful for the presence of the Lord. You? Good. Me too. I'm glad. Me too. So as I was, this last week or two, I was just kind of praying and thinking about what to share today, and it was really just one thing, just one word that just kept coming up over and over, and that was unity. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit this morning. Let's go ahead and open to Genesis chapter 11. And we're going to start in verse 1. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. I just like the way that he says that. It had the same one language and the same words, right? There was another dialect. Okay. The whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let's make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." This is a big message right there, but we'll move on. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over all the face of the earth. The thing that sticks out to me the most, besides the one language and the same words, is what God says. Verse 6, "Behold, they are one people, and they have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing they propose to do will be impossible for them." Right? Nothing they propose to do will be impossible for them. And it's this idea that the people were unified. Right? That the people in Babel and Josephus tells us this was actually Nimrod who was leading them and doing all of this, but that they were unified for a purpose. And we see that even in Genesis chapter 2 that unity is from God. And the thing is that they were using their unity for ungodly purposes. Right? We see some things like that going on in our country right now, right? In certain pockets in various cities where people are trying to unify to overthrow and to spite. And so, but unity is from God. Let's go back to Genesis 2. We're going to look. We're starting verse 18. It says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him.'" And jump to verse 21. "So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from man, he made into a beautiful," it doesn't say beautiful, But we know it was a beautiful woman, and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So we see here a picture of unity, right? With the very first two people, where God takes them, and he has Adam is by himself, and he makes God. I don't think that God wastes words, right? And so he says it is not good for man to be alone. How many guys can attest to that, right? I can say it is not good to be alone. And so God says, he makes this statement, it's not good for man to be alone. And then he shows there's nothing else created that is fit for you. There's no other animal or created thing that is a good complement or a helpmate or a partner. And so then God comes and he takes right from Adam, from his own body, he comes and he makes this woman. And it says that, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. They should be united, right? Not just in a physical sense, but also in united in purpose, united in their direction, united in their spirit. Like that this is something that is, they become one. So this is the design of obviously God for married people, or for people to be married and to obviously procreate and all that stuff. But really, at the heart of that is unity, right? And we see that the first thing when we go to the next chapter, and it tells the story of when the man and the wife were divided, right? And we see the ramifications of that. But the fact is that unity is from God, and he adds his blessing to it. And every good and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, right? Do we agree on this? Every good and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, right? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so the problem isn't the gift. The problem is what we saw in what we see when we look in Genesis 3 is that sin, right? Sin comes in and corrupts the things that God has given. So sin and, let me say this, sin and Satan both corrupt everything that God does and the gifts that he gives. So, for example, theft, right? Theft is a corruption of hard work. How so? I don't think anybody is actually born a thief, not a good one, right? We might be able to make a case that, well, we were born like maybe a liar or something, right? Because it's really easy to do that. But to be a good thief takes work, right? So there's the irony of that is that you're stealing what somebody else has gotten through their work, and instead of working with your own hands to get something, you're working to take something, right? So theft is a corruption of a hard work. Lust, right, for anything, is a corruption of natural, God-given desires. 1 John says, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world." And it's this idea that God has given us things, but it's not enough. I want more, right? Promiscuousness is a corruption of a gift, right, that we see here in Genesis 2, that God has designed to be enjoyed between a man and his wife, and yet it becomes corrupted and is a snare. Greed is a corruption of the blessing that God gives as a reward for hard work, right? That we should work with our hands and that he gives the increase. And so, even though we see, we start off in Genesis 11, we see that what had become of the people with their unity, that it was misdirected, it was misguided. The fact that shouldn't detract from the fact that God has designed unity and he's given unity as a gift to his people. Let's turn to Psalm 133. I'm sure somebody knew this was coming. Can't talk about unity without going to Psalm 133. It'd be a crime. Psalm 133 says this: Behold, hine, how good, matov, right? Behold the good, right? We sang this morning. Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It is like the precious oil on the head running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord has commanded the blessing, life forevermore. So unity has a blessing associated with it, right? Life forevermore. Is it any wonder that Yeshua, in his prayer before going to be crucified, he knew what was happening. One of the last things he did is he spent a long time praying for the unity of believers. John 17, I just have a snippet, but almost the entire chapter of John 17 is this prayer that Yeshua prays, and unity just comes up over and over and over again. It says, I do not ask, this is John 17:20, I do not ask on behalf of these alone, but for those who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. Even as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you sent me. So this gift that God has, that God gives us, blessing that he commands with it, this unity is not just so that we can all get along, but God is actually glorified through unity, and he uses it to show himself, to reveal himself to unbelievers. We're just going to look at a couple different scriptures here, but in Acts 4, right, this is a famous, well-known passage where it talks about the believers having everything in common. In verse 32, it says, the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and not one of them claimed that anything belonged to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. And with great power, the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Yeshua, and abundant grace was upon them all. Right? Abundant grace, but favor. It's charis. It's this gift. It's like a gift of grace or a gift of favor. And so this abundant grace was upon them all, and we know that it was from this group, from this area, from what was going on here, that we are here now. Right? That through this, that the gospel was spread throughout the world, that it wasn't just, even though it began with a small group of Jews, it didn't just stay there. It went out and it propagated throughout the world. And we see in various places throughout the Greek scriptures where the Apostle Paul or Peter or John are all talking about unity and make sure that you keep the bond of peace and love. And so we're going to look at just a couple of these, and then we're going to close. It says in Ephesians 4, starting in verse 11, it says, he gave some as apostles, and some as evangelists, some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Messiah, until we will attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Messiah. So unity is a key to fully understanding and fully walking with God himself. Right? It talked about, he gave some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers for equipping of the saints and building up of the body until we attain to the unity of faith. Right? That as we grow up and mature, it talks about that we grow up to a mature man, that unity should be a byproduct of our maturity. That as we learn and grow, as we draw near to the Lord and we know his word and we're familiar with him and his spirit and that is working in us and through us, both his word and his spirit, that we by nature or by supernature grow and mature into his image. Right? In 1 Corinthians 3, it talks about being transformed from faith to faith and glory to glory into the image of God. And that as we do this, that it should result in unity, that it should be part of our faith. And that's it. Okay. So let me ask, so having said that, is unity easy? Lord, I wish it were. I wish it were, right? But unity takes commitment, right? Unity takes work. It's not something that just happens. When you get married, for those of us who are married or have been married, when you're first married, it's so easy, right? It's so easy. Like you just love this person and they love you back and everything's great. And then you come back from the honeymoon and, slowly but surely things become normal and, right? And at some point, it becomes difficult to maintain that unity. And we have to work at that even in the closest relationships that we have. And so I do want to say a couple more things. Now I've driven home unity is important, unity is from God. How do we do it? How do we become unified? Right? There's a lot of answers, but I think we're going to focus on just a couple here, and then we're going to close. So I would say the first thing is that unity takes commitment. Without a commitment, it's not going to work, right? Because I can just walk away, right? With that relationship, with that marriage relationship, it takes work. And if we didn't have that commitment to one another, if we didn't have that commitment to doing life together, to walking down this path, then it would be a lot easier just to give up and walk away. The other thing that it takes is discipline. And there's lots of things that it takes discipline in, but one of the things that takes discipline is with our tongue and the things that we say, right? That the things that we say, it says that the tongue is a tree of life, and those who eat it those who love will eat its fruit. But it also says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And so it's incumbent upon us, if we want unity, whether it's unity in our families or unity in our congregation or unity at work, wherever it is, that we have to put a guard on our tongue and on the things that we say. And this is actually something that in the Messianic world, I mean, the Christian world has issues with this too, and pretty much the whole world has issues with this. But in the Messianic world, this is something that we really struggle with, is being critical. Like Bud was talking about. This is awesome. That we're so critical of the way that somebody does something or doesn't do something, or they either they don't believe how we do and they need to get saved, or they don't do Shabbat right, or eat. I can't believe they eat that, or I can't believe they don't eat that, or they wear this or they don't wear that, or whatever it is, right? And so one of the things that unity takes is a commitment to always seeing the best in other people and saying the best of them, right? Not participating in Lashon Hara, not participating in evil speech or coming against somebody with our tongue or talking badly about them, right? Even when we think that someone or something is unbiblical, that doesn't excuse the Lashon Hara, right? That it's even more incumbent upon us at that point to go and to make it right. It's interesting. Something stuck out to me this time going through this parsha that hadn't stuck out to me before, and that was so Bud talked about in chapter 12 Numbers 12, Aaron and Miriam are talking bad about Moses. And the thing that stuck out to me is here are the number 2 people in the nation who are talking badly about the number 1 person. And they weren't even talking about, it doesn't say that they were spreading this around to everybody. It was just it's just us, and we're just having our family meeting. And yet, God held them accountable for that and expresses his pleasure with it. And the thought that came to me was, if Aaron and Miriam didn't escape from that, what makes us think that we will? Right? How would I come out from talking badly about somebody unscathed? And so it's important that we don't entertain criticism of those in leadership. I try my best not to entertain personal criticism, even of our governor. Right? Now, do I agree with everything that he's done and said? Anybody who knows me knows that I don't, right? But there's a difference between disagreeing with a decision that he's made and things that he's done in that position and saying that he's a bad person, right? And we shouldn't entertain criticism about others no matter what their situation is. But we should thoughtfully and prayerfully consider criticisms about ourselves, right? And I think that when we have a healthy perspective on us, on ourselves, that lends itself to unity, because what happens is I know that I have shortcomings, and when I see somebody else doing it, the same thing that I do, or maybe it's a little bit different, but I can think of, okay, well, I know that I have this and that, and I can extend grace to them as I would want grace extended to me, right? And this is called love, right? This is what covers over a multitude of sin. So if we're not going to entertain criticism of people, but we have something against them, what do we do? It says of Leviticus, you shall not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. And you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. All right, I'm going to close with this. This is from Colossians chapter 3. This is a recipe for unity. So if you're taking notes, you can go there, and I imagine this as okay, half a cup of sugar, 3/4 cup of flour, 1 stick of butter, right? This is how we walk in unity. And there's actually a few recipes in the scriptures if you want to go find them. This is one. It says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones." Do you hear this? You are God's chosen one. If we believe in him and believe in Yeshua for salvation, and we put our trust in him, we're God's chosen one. You are God's chosen one, holy and beloved. Put on compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these things, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Messiah rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body. Right? This harkens back to Genesis 2, one flesh, one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Messiah dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, and with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Wives, submit yourselves as is fitting to the Lord. Submit yourself. Let me back up. I'm reading multiple lines. Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Messiah. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. It's interesting to me that some of this, when he's talking about this recipe for unity, he doesn't just talk, he doesn't stay outside the home. Right? He talks about all these things, and then he comes and says, wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Children, obey your parents. Parents, don't provoke your children. Right? And he even handles, but what if, fill in the blank, right? And we'll talk about this some other time. But he says to obey them and to serve them, to whatever you do, work as for the Lord and not for men, for the wrongdoer will be paid according to the wrong he's done. There is no partiality. Our job, it's this idea, like when we were talking about being emotionally healthy and spiritually strong, of I can't control the other person. I'm only responsible for myself. Right? It's that idea. So my hope is that we take this. I would encourage you to take Colossians 3 and list it out. Put it somewhere that we can see it in your home, and maybe it's in the mirror, in the bathroom, or the refrigerator, or wherever it might be. And let's just keep coming back to this. Let's foster this heart of unity and this bond here in our congregation and starting at home, and see what the Lord will do.